Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine. Good evening, participants. Welcome you all to yet another session as part of the CIIC webinar series. And it's our pleasure that today's session is being dealt by one of the startups who are incubated at CIIC. So for the benefit of people who are attending our sessions for the first time, I'd like to give a short and brief introduction about CIIC. CIIC is Crescent Innovation and Incubation Council. We are an incubator based out of Crescent University in Chennai. Currently, we're supporting over 36 startups who are incubated with us. Apart from that, we're also supporting 21 student-based startups who are in ideation stage and beyond that. Our primary thrust areas are life sciences and industry 4.0, and Impensis falls under the life science space, wherein they are part of the agri-tech sector. In terms of funding, we've helped our startups achieve over rupees 70 lakhs in terms of government grants and rupees 39 crores in terms of private equity and venture capital firms. Moving on, today's session is all about the startup story of Impensis Electronics. They'll be talking about their journey as first generation agri-tech entrepreneurs and much more. So a brief profile about the company and the two co-founders. So the company Impensis Electronics provides IoT solutions for reducing post-harvest losses of fruits and vegetables. The company has been recognized as one of the top 10 companies in India that are focusing on UN Sustainable Development Goals and has been awarded the most scalable startup by EDII. So since they are working in a sector which is much needed, food waste is something which is big time, and multiple governments and in fact, as I said, UN Sustainable Development is also trying to solve this problem. Impensis is trying to also do their part. Moving on, one of the co-founders is Guru Vignesh. He is an MBA graduate with an experience in industries like KPO, electric vehicles. With both engineering and management skills, he takes care of the marketing and finance divisions of the company. The next co-founder is Dinesh Narayan. Dinesh is an instrumentation engineer and has a strong technical background with 6 years of experience in automation and control. He is the technical director of the company and handles product development and commissioning. So quick set of instructions before we move on. Participants, the session will be 45 minutes followed by questions. So as usual, you can share your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom. And also please, while chatting, do send the option of chatting to all panelists and attendees. Currently, it will be to all panelists. People might not be able to see your message. And a sound check and presentation check. So participants, can you hear me clearly and see the presentation? If yes, if you can put your hands up, it will be easier for us to see. Yeah, thank you so much, participants. You can lower your hands. Over to Guru and Dinesh for the session. Thank you.
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Akshay, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
So thank you, Akshay, for the introduction. First of all, I'd like to thank Crescent Innovation and Incubation Council and Mr. Parvez for giving us this opportunity to talk about our journey in the products and solutions that we are providing today. And looking at the list of previous speakers, especially yesterday's session, Dr. Venu Sumantran was there. We have high regards for her. She has been helping us and mentoring us in many ways. So looking at the list of previous speakers, I think we are the most young startup here to address this session. So welcome all the participants. So I'll start the presentation by telling you the agenda for the presentation. Just a minute. Yeah. So I'll just take you through the journey of how we started and where we are right now. And then I'll just talk a bit about horticulture in India, where I'll explain to you what is horticulture, how much contribution it is making in agriculture sector in India. Then I'll talk about the problems in horticulture and approaches on how to solve these problems. Then Mr. Dinesh will talk about farm to fork model, what it is, and conventional way versus Impensis way of solving these problems. In this, I think that will be an interesting slide for all of you to listen to, where he will talk about how we just approach and problem. Like for example, if we have different kind of fruits, if instead of apple we have cherries or any other fruits, how we study that particular commodity, how we study a particular vegetable, and how we give in solution to help that can help to increase the shelf life of that commodity. Then finally, the impact of all our solutions and summary of this presentation. So to start with our journey. So we are a 2-year-old startup. I was doing my MBA and Dinesh was working for a Mumbai-based company when we registered this. When we registered this in October 2017, I think you can see that picture. That's my house, first floor. So we registered the company with our house address, and no, this was our office until we shifted to Chennai. And just like many of the engineering graduates who discussed in the final year about starting a new venture, myself and Dinesh, we had a lot of discussions before, and it took really 5 years for us to end up doing this. And the second milestone is our first export. The one thing that we have realized during the journey is the power of networking. Even Mr. Parvez Alam used to say, network is your net worth, he used to say. I think it's really true. With the power of networking, we got our first export. So there, the value of that export was very small, and the contribution as an individual that we need to do was very, very little. But this export actually taught us on the documentation and other regulations that needed to make any exports. Then following that, I think I was still in my college and Dinesh was in Mumbai, and then this magic happened in February 2019. We participated in an event called eNantra, conducted by EDII, which is Entrepreneurship Development Innovation Institute in Tamil Nadu, along with Anna University, and we won the most scalable startup award. So I said it is a magic because this award actually helped us, motivated us, or even pushed us to pursue the idea that we had. So with the cash amount that we received, we got nearly 1.5 lakhs of cash prize after winning this award. So with this cash prize, we started making our prototypes, minimum viable products, and started testing it. So once we did our prototypes and started testing it, we got our second export order. By the time we were completely into this full time. I finished my MBA in April 2019, and Dinesh also left his job there and he came here. So we started our company in full time. So this was our second export order, but this time it was a serious business, not like our first export order. This time, all our skills were put into test, many things that we have learned, and mostly, or to say that 2 months of work that we had on those for that order was really huge, and it is incomparable, I would say. And I think as a first generation entrepreneur, as I said initially, that the networking is one of the most important traits. And the next is like you should have that ability to make our feet wet. Unless we just go there and look at things and try those things, I don't think it is possible for us to move further. Most of the things that seemed obvious for us before doing this order where actually took a lot of time for us to understand. So we really learned a lot in this, and this order actually helped us to gain traction in Indian markets as well. So we are very fortunate to have many good people around us, and one such person is Mr. Ravichandran Purushottaman. He is the director of Danfoss India. So once we finished this export order, we were thinking of shifting from Madurai to have a better market reach. We were confused between Coimbatore and Chennai, and we had some reasons for moving to Coimbatore than Chennai. Then we took this issue to our mentor. We explained him what all our thoughts and all the data that we had. And he asked us to incubate at Crescent Innovation and Incubation Council. So we got incubated here in October 2019. And I think it really helped us. After joining CIIC, the visibility of our company has really grown, and we are actually getting a lot of opportunities here. And last but not the least, as Akshay also mentioned, our company has been selected as recognized as one of the top 10 startups in India that contributes to UN Sustainable Development Goals. So this event was organized by United Nations Development Program, and the finals was conducted in Delhi at UN office. So more than 350 participants participated. There were like 3 rounds of filtration, and we were there in the final round, and we were recognized as top 10 startups. So choosing agri-tech as our domain was not actually an accident. We see a lot of problems there in the agriculture sector. And experience, as Akshay would have told you, like Dinesh has in automation experience, in warehouse automation experience for 5 to 6 years. So with all these things, we thought this is the right area for us to enter. So I think I don't want to tell you the importance of agriculture in India. We all know about that, right? So first, talking about the contribution of agriculture to our GDP, still agriculture is contributing about 18% of the GDP. We see there's a huge growth in the service sector, but still, agriculture employs the maximum number of workers there. But still, making every farmer profitable is a huge concern for everyone, even including for the government. So government wants to double farmer income by 2022. As you all know, that is one of their visions. But looking at the union budget, last budget, government has allocated somewhere near 3 lakh crores for agriculture, and many initiatives like Kisan Rail. No, they have and other subsidies for agriculture to uplift the agriculture. And looking at the effects during the crisis scenario, I think we are in the right juncture. We all would have realized how important the agriculture commodities are, how important these essential commodities during this COVID-19 crisis. I don't know how many of you stood in queues for hours to buy all these fruits and vegetables. The one good thing that this crisis has actually taught us is the importance of all these agriculture commodities. And one more thing, the number of startups that is being registered in India under agri-tech is huge. I think this generation has realized that there's a huge potential and opportunity in agri-tech sector. There are huge problems that needs to be solved. So every company, they are coming up with some unique and innovative solutions. And these 4 points is very much, I think, evident to show how important agriculture in India is. But our company, Impensis Electronics, is more concerned in horticulture. So for people who doesn't know what horticulture is, horticulture comes under the umbrella of agriculture, where it consists of growing of fruits, vegetables, plantation crops, and spices. Yeah, just a minute. Yeah, so as you could see, the horticulture was acknowledged by an Indian government as a separate sector in the mid-80s. So the need for this diversification to horticulture sector was, was very eminent at that stage. And they just, made a separate sector aiming to improve the income through productivity, generating employment and in enhancing the exports. So if you look at the departments that control this horticulture industry, is the Department of Agriculture, Cooperation of Farmers Welfare, and Ministry of Agriculture. So that is the controlling body of this horticulture sector. And horticulture alone contributes to nearly 33% of the total agriculture output. So if you look at the graph there, you can able to see, we produce nearly 320 million tons of horticulture products every year in India. And from 2014 to 2018, you could see how it has grown gradually, and we only expect it to grow. And as you could also see that the contribution of fruits and vegetables, fruits alone contributes to about 98 million tons, and vegetables around 180 million tons. So speaking about the Indian scenario, Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, and Madhya Pradesh are the major contributors of horticultural crops here in India. So from agriculture, I have narrowed it down to horticulture. Now let's get deeper into the horticulture. So when you look at horticulture, as I said, it consists of several commodities like spices, plantation crops, flowers, fruits, and vegetables. These are all the contributions. Spices contributes to about 2.6% of the total total horticulture commodities, and plantation crops contributes about 6%, and flowers about 1.2%. When we look at fruits, it contributes nearly 31.2% of the total production. Then vegetables comes around nearly 59%. So it is very much, you can see the contribution was highly skewed towards fruits and vegetables. Only fruits and vegetables alone contributes about 90.4% of the production. So can you able to see the problem here? Have told all good things about horticulture. Now I'll just enter into the problem, because out of all these commodities, which commodities do you think will get damaged soon? Which commodities will get easily rotted? So it's fruits and vegetables. So it's high time for us to know how to store these fruits and vegetables, how to increase its shelf life. So the problems with fruits and vegetables. So, sorry. Yeah. So first I would like to talk about post-harvest losses. Post-harvest losses, I'm not talking about the loss that the food that we waste once it reaches our plate. I'm not at all concerned about that at this place. Post-harvest losses are the losses that happens from the production base to the consumption center. Once the crops are produced, from there, the time it reaches the plate. I'm just concerned about those losses. There are several processes involved in this post-harvest stages, like preconditioning, delivery, storage, and to the retail end. So all these stages has its own losses. So do you really think it is that much important? To give you a fact, I'll tell you, globally 1.3 billion metric tons of food is being wasted before human consumption. So this is nearly 30% of the food that we produce, which means 30% of the food that is being produced in the world are getting wasted before it reaches our plate. When you look at India, the scenario is even more worst. The monetary value of the post-harvest losses is about 92,651 crores. 92,651 crores is so huge that you can able to feed 5 crore Indians for a year, all 365 days. So that is the amount of losses that we make only in post-harvest. And if you see the United Nations report, they say by 2050 we need 90% more food than what we have today, which means we need to double the food production of what we are having now, to realize these demands. So just by increasing the production capacity alone will not able to help us to reach this target by 2050. Post-harvest losses is a huge thing. Only if we can able to concentrate and we can able to reduce this post-harvest losses, we can able to save a lot of food that actually helps a lot of people. So the problem with the post-harvest losses is actually growing day by day. So for several other reasons, and one such reason is urbanization, I should say. So if you look at urbanization, many millions of people are getting migrated to cities every year. And when we talk about food, especially fruits and vegetables, the distance between the consumption space and the production center has grown drastically. Whenever the distance between the production space and the consumption center has grown, the losses associated with it also grows. So when we look at the post-harvest value chain, where I have segregated it into 3 stages. Just a minute. Yeah, where I have segregated into 3 stages. One is about farmer capacity, infrastructure, and market. So in farmer capacity, I would like to address 2 concerns. One is improper harvesting, which means demand and supply mismatch. Farmer doesn't know how much food is in demand, but he sometimes produces a lot more than what is needed in the market. So he ends up wasting the excess produce. And the next is poor holding capacity. At farmer end, if you go and see, they don't have any a storage facility at their place. The storage facility are always somewhere far away from the farming area. So farmer doesn't have access to any storage space. The next is infrastructure. As I said, once the farmer sends this, once the farmer takes the produce and goes into the storage space, we have very poor storage infrastructure as well as distribution infrastructure. By distribution, I mean the logistics, how we take food from one place to other place. For example, fruits and vegetables needs to be taken in reefer vehicles, but not in normal trucks. Whereas in India, we have a gap of about 88%. We don't use reefer vehicles at all. Then about market. In market, we have very limited market access and imperfect market information, which means farmer doesn't know what market actually needs. Even if he knows some data, most of the data are imperfect data. So these 3 things are one of the main reasons why there's a huge post-harvest losses. And how we can able to approach these problems. Many companies have approached it in a different way, but still, we have a lot of post-harvest losses happening around us. So I have divided it into 4 levels. One is supermarket and retail store level. The commodities that we see in supermarkets and retail stores where we go and buy fruits and vegetables, even at the supermarket stage, these fruits and vegetables are getting wasted. If you are not buying fruits and vegetables, if they have stocked it for more than a day or 2, it gets wasted. Then the next is cold storage level. Cold storage is just an if you move backwards, cold storage is a level just behind the supermarket. It acts as a distribution hub sometimes. So at cold storage, the commodities were stored. It depends on the commodities. Some commodities will be stored for 2 to 3 days. But it's like apples or lemons, it might be stored even for months. So even at cold storage level, just by maintaining the right temperature and humidity, we can't able to solve all these problems. So again, we need to have a different approach how we can able to reduce problem at cold storage level. Then logistics level, which is the huge market in India. As I mentioned before, there is an 88% gap in between using reefer vehicles in India. So most of these perishables, mainly fruits and vegetables, are not being transported using reefer vehicles. Then finally, farmer level, which is our favorite level of approaching to this problem. As you can able to see in this pie chart, nearly 62% of the farmers in India have less than 1 hectare of land, and 19% have less than 1 to 2 hectares of land, which means about 80% of the farmers are having less than 2 hectares of land. So these farmers, produce fruits and vegetables, but they don't have any facility to store this, and they can't able to afford it also. So what they do sometimes, if they just produce more, they can't sell it to the market, and it ends up wasting. So our approach to deal with this, like to form a farmer cluster and give them an affordable and economical solution, so that it can able to solve that problem even at the farmer level. So in Pensus Electronics as a company, we look at all these 4 levels: supermarket level, cold storage level, logistics level, and farmer level. So we have solutions for at each of these levels, and we just want to be there in all these levels to completely reduce this post-harvest losses. So how we are reducing these post-harvest losses using our solutions. So Mr. Dinesh will take our session from here. He will explain you the solutions, how we are approaching these problems, and how our solutions are being designed to this. Over to Dinesh.
Yeah, hello. Thank you, Guru. I hope everyone can hear me. So in the last few slides, we have seen all the problems in agriculture. So we have seen so many problems there in supermarkets and various sectors. Now we will just see how we are solving these as a company, how we are solving all the problems in the existing sector. So before we go, we just have to see the quick view of the farm to fork model. So in the farm to fork model, there is farm gate, there is transportation, there is storage, there is again a transportation and end customer. What happens is in farm gate, the farmer produces the harvest, keeps it in a preconditioning stage, and then gives it to a reefer van or truck or anything. And from the truck, it goes to a place where it can be stored till the demand is met, and that is the cold storage area. In the cold store, there are temperature control processes happening to keep the foods. And when the demand arises, it is then again put into a truck or a wagon or railway car, and then put it to a end consumer, that is a supermarkets. So this is the basic idea of cold chain. And as you can see, storage is the place where most of the time the fruits spend their life cycle in. So after the harvest, before it reaches the supermarket, it spends most of the time in the storage, and that is where we want to control it. So this is a conventional scenario of how people are doing it right now. So there is a cold room, fruits are kept inside the cold room, and there is a split AC type of thing, as you can see in your homes. So this is just control the temperature and humidity of the fruit kept inside. And what people do by this, I just want to tell you a quick story. In our ancient days, we had sadhus and rishis who did meditation in Himalayas. Ever thought why they choose Himalayas? Because Himalayas is a place where the temperature is very low. Thereby, their body doesn't need so much of energy, and they could concentrate on meditation more amount of time. So that is why they choose Himalayas. And what we do with fruit is the same thing. We just reduce the temperature of the ambient atmosphere where the fruit is kept, thereby increasing their shelf life. But is this enough? Is this sufficient to store the fruit? I don't think so, because if it is sufficient, we won't be facing losses of such huge amount. So we wanted to find a solution to all of this. So what we thought was to analyze the scientific way and also check how foreign countries are doing it, because that's predominantly a process of startups. They always look to Western countries of how to solve the problem and then implement it in our country. But when we sought the solution, we couldn't find a suitable solution which is adopted even in the West, because West actually have a less amount of post-harvest loss. They had more consumption losses. That is a separate case. So in order to solve our problem, we actually had to go about the biological process of the fruit. and then decide how we will solving it. So I'll just explain how we do it right now. Temperature and humidity is inevitable. We have to control it because we have to give the temperature, right amount of temperature and humidity for the fruits to stay fresh. But other than that, we also have to control the metabolic activities. Why do we want to control, and how do we control metabolic activities? Fruits, vegetables, we all agree are like living organisms. So they respire, they utilize the glucose inside their pulp and then emit carbon dioxide, consume oxygen in the respiration process and age. So while they age, they rot and get damaged. So this is how the normal process is. So what we thought was to arrest the respiration. So if somehow we could arrest the respiration, fruits could stay at the same stage for a longer period of time. So in order to arrest the respiration, we control the gases oxygen and carbon dioxide. So by controlling oxygen, we don't provide oxygen to the fruit. So the fruit doesn't respire, so it doesn't age, it doesn't rot, and it doesn't get wasted. So it stays fresh in the same place. Another thing that we observed is fruit has a high hormone activity, such as ethylene. Ethylene is a natural plant growth regulator. It actually helps fruit get ripened more quickly. So if we somehow remove ethylene and then pass on an inert atmosphere to the fruit, it will stay fresh for a longer period of time. And then there is bacteria and virus. We found that bacteria, virus are also present always in the fruit biological components, and they affect the fruit's shelf life. So if we can remove or control pathogens, then we are able to elongate the shelf life of the commodity. So all these process we do, and we control the shelf life and increase it to about 1.5 to 2 times of what is present in the market right now. So just as an example, in the Egypt export, the first export that we did, fruits were capable of shelf life of 6 months in their atmosphere. But using our systems, we were now able to demonstrate that fruits are now able to be fresh for about 8 to 9 months. So we have achieved 1.5 times of the earlier shelf life capacity of the infrastructure. So we'll just see how we are doing it in the engineering background. So what we do is we have a sensor and we have an app-based control. So this sensor is what monitors the biological, respiration, hormonal activity, and the temperature and humidity. So this sensor monitors it, provides it to a controller. The controller then communicates with an app-based control. The app actually is an IoT-based device that actually understands the fruit, understands its respiration level, understands its hormonal activity, and decides to control it accordingly. So what we achieved through this is the system is same irrespective of what the fruit is. So we can keep apples, potatoes, tomatoes, or everything. The app will analyze what fruit is kept inside and then act accordingly. So we have actually saved so much of work on dividing products based on the fruits. Our products are also modular. So we designed it in such a way that we are able to keep modules inside the system. So whenever there is any requirement of a module, we just plug and play it. When there is no requirement, we just remove it. So there are 5 modules that are required in our controller. There are temperature and refrigeration control, carbon dioxide, ethylene, oxygen, and bacteria and virus killing capability. And all these are used to keep its storage and processing in the cold storage area. And then there is data analytics always, because you have to tell data how the data is behaving, how the storage process has been, or what improvement can they do for the users. And using these modules, our application areas include fruits and vegetable storage systems, customized storage for apples, potatoes, onions, and others like that, ripening systems, and perishable logistics. In ripening, we actually apply an inverse process with our systems. What happens is when we remove ethylene, which is a natural plant growth hormone, the plant gets ripened. Plant doesn't get ripened because of less presence of ethylene. But in case of ripening, we actually pass additional ethylene to the fruit so that it ripens quickly. So that is how bananas and oranges or citrus fruits are ripened using our systems. So we are able to both arrest the respiration and biological activity and also accelerate it using our same system. So they are used in ripening and also for logistics, because we are able to control the modular activity of the control system. it can also go into a reefer van or a truck or in a reefer rail wagon if it comes in future. So now we'll just see how the application area is with our products. So using our solution, we provide controlled atmosphere systems, palletized storage systems, ripening systems, and mushroom farms for cold storages. So this is where most of the storage system is happening and which is where we focus a lot on. But using our modular systems, we were able to also provide systems for supermarkets where we control the ambient atmosphere so that the fruit is kept fresh even when people are moving in and out, and using logistics. So we provide solutions for trucks, for tracking them, for monitoring the temperature, humidity, and gas concentration, and also to storage solutions while it is transporting. So if there is any fruit, say for apple that is coming from Himachal to Tamil Nadu, it takes about 15 to 16 days in a reefer truck. So in that situation, we are able to store that fruit fresh during the transportation using our system. So that is what we have achieved till now. And then our last focus is on farmers, because what we thought was cold storages are a centralized system kept at a place which is in between farm and supermarket. And that is actually a capital heavy infrastructure, and that also needs a lot of investment and time and also resources. So what we thought was to decentralize this cold storages, provide smaller units, miniaturized cold storage to farmers where they can keep their harvest, about 10 to 20 metric tons of harvest inside the cold storage, and get the same solution that is being there for a 500 ton or 1000 ton cold storage. So this 10 to 20 metric ton system will keep the harvest at their place for a longer duration of time. They can control the demand, they can reduce the storage, reduce the wastage, and also they can do it with a less capital. So this will help improve the farmer's income. And also we are eliminating a transitionary transport that is from farm gate to the cold storage. So we are eliminating that. And by that, we are actually profiting the farmers in case. So this is what we are coming up with. This is not right now that is not available. We are actually working on it. So hopefully we will finish it after the lockdown ends of Corona. So we'll show you the photos of what we did till now. Oh, sorry. So what impact do we have because of the systems? So because of our activities, what we do is we provide a better storage and management of food after the harvest, and we increase the revenue of the person, and we reduce the quantitative and price fluctuations of the commodity. So we are able to store it for a longer period of time. If you remember, just a year before, there was high fluctuation for prices in onions because onions were not able to store, but using our systems, we can store onions. So there won't be any fluctuations in pricing. And also because of there is less infrastructure. So that we can avoid by using miniaturized cold stores so that prices of onions or similar products doesn't fluctuate so much. And also we impact the UN Sustainable Development Goals, because what UN says is by 2050, we need 90% more food. But what we think is by avoiding the wastage itself, we are able to feed so many people. So we can impact the zero hunger, and then there is a responsible consumption and production. So once we reduce the wastage, we are more responsible towards the production and also the consumption of food. And we, as Guru said, we are one of the top 10 companies in India that actually solves to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We ensure the affordability and availability of food to all strata of the society thereby. So some of the photos of our systems, so you can see the automation controller, then our sensor modules and the dampers. These are all already installed. It is in export orders also. So this is actual site images from them. So we have installed this. We are saving at about 8,000 tons of fruits right now as we speak. So we are actually demonstrating our fruit storages in India and also in foreign countries. And then in conclusion, what I want to say is as I always say, the problem of feeding 1 billion people in a country is not agriculture or production. The challenge lies in taking the production to the market, to the people. So that is where the challenge lies in. The production or the consumption is not the problem. We can always increase it. But the challenge lies in taking the commodity from the farmer to the consumption is where the challenge lies in. So please follow us in the social media platforms. We regularly do videos to disseminate the information, what we know about post-harvest and also running a startup. So I hope you had an informative session. If there is any questions you can ask, please do that. And thank you for CISE to give an opportunity to talk about.
Thank you, Dinesh and Guru. It was an informative session. So before we go on to the Q&A session, I'll raise the polls over here. So meanwhile, can you just go through the Q&A, and some questions are also raised in the chat session. So I'll just raise the polls over here. Okay, Dinesh, how are you going? Should I read out the questions, or you guys will be taking the questions individually?
Yeah,
Yeah, you will take it. Is there in Q&A, right?
Yeah, it is there.
Yeah, okay. So what are the challenges faced during this pandemic situation and what strategies used to overcome that? Yeah, so the challenges, as of course, everybody knows it was a complete lockdown. We cannot able to open our office. Your office is in Chennai. And as a company that contributes to agriculture sector, our part actually starts once the refrigeration part is done. So it is there in the infrastructure building. So our company, when a person decided to construct a cold storage, when a person wants any storage solutions, becomes there. So at this point, our company had actually, we faced a little crisis at this stage. So we haven't made any great sales in the past 1 month, but we have got some regular orders. People are much more aware about what cold storage is. People really need some good storage solutions. So we are getting calls for that, and we are sending them information and quotes for that. So hopefully, this once this lockdown ends by the end of this month, we will be doing more and more cold storage process, and we will be storing a lot more tons of fruits and vegetables. And Dinesh, can you take this question? Shall you suggest any other non-hazardous chemical for ripening of fruits other than ethylene?
Yeah, so ripening actually happens through ethylene. So ethylene is the only gas which is naturally present as a plant growth hormone that accelerates ripening. But if you cannot pass ethylene as a gas directly, which is the most recommended process, then you can use ethapon. Ethapon is actually powder that uses atmospheric oxygen to control it, control the ripening. It indirectly releases ethylene, but it's in a powder form, so you can actually have the usage as a convenient method. Other than that, ripening cannot be accelerated without ethylene.
Yeah. So can you brief on career opportunities for food technology students in this sector? Okay. So talking about agri-tech sector, there are companies that is working on knowing the nutrient values of fruits and vegetables without cutting it, non-invasive method to identify the nutrient values or the level of the juice content in the fruits and vegetables. So that is one area you can look upon. And agri-tech, talking about it, I think most of you know about hydroponics. So one of the growing trend in India and also in abroad. So there are many companies they just started in India. I think you might have a good future over there. And talking about companies involving in post-harvest losses, the career opportunities must be more for people who do programmings in PLCs, people who can understand the biological activities of fruits and vegetables that can actually help. And more our company is more of an electronics rather than completely studying into food, food and vegetables or food technology. Dinesh, any thoughts about that?
So yeah, as you said, engineering is what we have done. So our application, our knowledge comes from the automation background to apply in food technology. So maybe you can have different backgrounds, whether it's engineering or something else, which you can apply in food technology and see how the cross-functional goes on.
So the next is like, where did you find more success, India or abroad? Okay. See, the problem is very prevalent in India, and I will not say problem. The mindset in India is that India is more a price sensitive market than what it is there in abroad. So that is why, it was easy for us to convince a customer in abroad rather than here in India. So what happened is like the margin that we get when we do an abroad project is more compared to the project that we do in India. But if you look at the opportunity wise, I think we have more opportunity here in India than abroad. So that's it. So opportunity wise, if you want success, it is in India. Cash wise, if you want, it is in abroad. So that's the summary of the answer. So what are all the hurdles you faced as a startup? Your suggestion for new startups? Hurdles, I don't know. See, like everyone faces. If you think you want to start a company, I think it is better to go and register it tomorrow. Very, very easy to register a startup today in India. There are many, many companies getting registered every day. And struggles in the sense like we had a problem of guidance. As they said, we are first generation entrepreneurs. We doesn't know. We really, need to go through of all the procedures. And as I said, I think there was one more question linked to this. Someone asked about our first export order experience. What are the documentation things that we have learned? So since we are a startup, we doesn't know about this export orders or what happens inside. So when we first got an export order because of this network, we sent a quote. They accepted the quote. He sent us the advance 50% of the money. And for the advance 50% of the money to get remittance into our account, there are a lot of bank documents that you need to fill. Inward remittance is there. For that, you need to fill a few forms because we haven't mentioned in our bank that we are going to deal with export orders before. So that is one thing. Then there is something called import export code that we need to register to make an import or an export when you are in India, and many more things like you might when you look at it, it might look very easy, but when you go there and work on it, that becomes very, very tough. So the only the suggestion that for new startups is just go there, make your feet wet. Only experience can able to help you rather than getting advices from many other people.
In terms of what hurdles you faced as a startup, I would just like to add to what Guru said, is if you want to do a startup, just prepare mentally that you are going to endure a lot, because startup is perseverance. It will take time, and then you will have cash crunches at many times. You will need guidances. Please do find a mentor as a they will guide you a lot. They will help all challenges. Through CIIC, we have found some good mentors who are actually guiding us. So that way, that is helpful. So, and also prepare for cash crunches. For us, because we were young and also from a first generation business people, we face a lot of problems from the family side also, because they wanted to have a stable salaried career and wanted to do something that creates an impact in the society. So personally, there is also a problem. There is problem in the startup side. So you just have to be prepared mentally. And then you will see with the mentors, there is incubation centers, there is Startup India. They will help you guide throughout the journey and see how your startup goes.
Did you avail subsidy from government? If yes, what it is? Okay. So government subsidies are there for cold storages. We actually work with partners, a lot of partners. We have infrastructure partner, we have refrigeration partners. So we go and meet some consultants who actually take up a complete turnkey solutions. So for example, Agri Value Chain is one of the consultants to whom we approached. We go and tell them that we give our systems to your project. So the consultants go, he take up a project and he do a paperwork for all those subsidies. Government is still giving 30-40% subsidy of the capex that we spend for cold storages. And you can look at NCCD website or NHB. NCCD is their National Cold Chain Development, and NHB National Horticulture Board. Those two websites, if you go and visit, you will get an detailed procedure of getting these subsidies and what all the subsidies you will get. So how's the opportunity for a student entrepreneur in agriculture to get bank loan? Okay, something that we haven't tried yet. Okay, and the student entrepreneur also. I don't know actually. Maybe government has just recently announced some security-less loans. I don't know how it is going to work, but literally we haven't tried for any bank loans yet. We are completely bootstrapped as of now. We are still trying to find some investors who are interested in our product. So I don't know how to answer that question. Sorry.
Maybe CAIC or any incubation center can give you information about how people do with a student entrepreneur.
In the present community, there are many techniques chemically to prevent the fruits and vegetable losses. What is your idea about that, Dinesh?
So there are techniques that are also banned by the government. There are also techniques which are economically difficult to do. So chemical techniques to prevent vegetable loss is always there. What we do is a engineered engineered solution to that. So we have sensors and controllers that analyze the respiration rate, hormonal rate, and prevent that. So which is actually retrofitted into existing cold store or any cold store. So that is how we came to approach this solution. Chemically, there are many possible solution. There is a chemical, 1-MCP is a chemical. 1-MCP is a chemical that arrests ethylene generation in fruits and all. So if you are a chemical background that can do such things, then it is always an opportunity.
So during this lockdown, many farmers are throwing their produced fruits and vegetables to ground. So they're all wasted. So this may be the right time for you to implement your product all over India or Tamil Nadu. Have you taken any steps? Yes, of course. So we are doing it from the day one. We have been trying to meet people, who have, people from government side. Mr. Chiru, we have met quite recently. He is the Commissioner of Tamil Nadu Agriculture Department, and our mentors, who is associated with CII. We have taken many steps. We have also, sent our presentations to people who can actually use our technology to preserve these things. And from the customer side also, we have sent quite a few quotes this season, because as I said before, people are really aware about this cold chain infrastructure because of this COVID-19 crisis. So we are keenly looking at the opportunities, and we are also trying our best to make use of those opportunities. So would you also provide setting up of coconut drying unit? Dinesh?
So coconut drying unit, we haven't thought about that. We haven't got a chance to look into it as a technical standpoint and also from a business standpoint, or how we can do it. But maybe if in the future, if there is an opportunity for looking into it, then we will most certainly check on that also. Right now, we couldn't pursue it right now because we have our hands full at cold storage itself.
So do you think of extending your startup to other sectors? Yes, of course. So right now we are concentrating more on fruits and vegetables. Next, we will be concentrating on dairy products, so milk and milk products. Next on meats. So these are all the things that needs a cold chain solution. So talking about why we chose fruits and vegetables first, I think India being the topmost beef exporter, we have a very organized and a very good infrastructure over there, and the dairy industry is almost well organized. Only the most unorganized and the sector that needs more solutions for fruits and vegetables. So that's why we tried it first. Of course, we will extend our solutions to meat, dairy in the future. So what is the method you use for microorganism control?
So there are actually different methods to control microorganisms, and we ourselves employed two of them. So we do it by ozone, and then there is another method for controlling microorganisms to UV light. So what we do for bigger systems is we use ozone. We don't mix it with the ambient air. We actually take the air out and mix it with ozone, disinfect it completely, and then pass the gas again into the cold store. So this way we ensure that there is no microorganism presence inside the cold store. Another, for smaller units and smaller systems, is what we have is UV lighting. So there are researchers that show UV light also kills microorganisms. So we use that system to disinfect the air inside the cold room using UV light and then pass it back again. one such interesting idea is yesterday session, Dr. Vedil Sumandran took a webinar in research methodology, and where she said there is a repurpose of existing product. So one such instance is our UV-based disinfectant that we use for cold stores and food storage systems. What we found during this time is also capable of destroying coronaviruses in this time. So that is an added advantage for us, because we didn't think it that way. We had a different application in cold storages, but what we found was our systems are perfectly capable of destroying coronavirus and keeping the ambient air safe from them. So yeah, we use these control systems to get away from microorganisms.
So how to give solution to dairy animals in case of fodder, in case of land shortage? Will hydroponics technology help in that situation with economically viable? So we have tried hydroponics ourselves. You know, we have tried it. We have tried it for a few plants with cucumber, tomatoes. We have tried it with our own system. You know, we had a plan of doing in controlled environment farming before. So it is actually economically viable, if you ask me. Maybe making it in a commercial scale, it is highly capital intensive at initial stages, but definitely it gives you more return than what is happening on the ground right now. And the main disadvantage with hydroponics is like only limited amount of crops you can grow in that, mostly green leaf vegetables. And with fodder, I think it is very much easy to grow fodder using hydroponics. Dinesh, your take on this?
Yeah, actually for dairy animals, you don't require land space for pasteurized land and all. You can grow wheat grass in fodder machines that help in giving the cows or any dairy product. What happens is in fodder systems, you can generate up to 50 kilos in a small land area. And actually that costs you about 1.5 to 2 lakhs. So that is your capital investment. We did a couple of research on that. So that is how we found out all these things. So you can do a fodder machine, construct yourself with your technical capability, or you can just do it as a turnkey solution and then grow wheat grasses and grass inside the fodder machine and then provide it to the dairy industry. You don't require separate land for that.
So are sensors made from Indian parts? Any Chinese parts needed? We are importing two things from outside India. So one for our what is that? For ethylene sensor, the main ethylene sensor part is being imported from Switzerland, and we develop circuit around that. And for our humidifiers, we take humidifier parts from China. So these are only the two things that we are importing. Other than that, all other the sensors and the electronic parts are completely made by us. And here,
and these two things are also because there is no Indian alternative available. So there are no ethylene sensor core that are manufactured in India. And also there are no ultrasonic mists that are manufactured in India. So because of lack of availability, we had to move. Other than that, other things are completely indigenous. We are making it ourselves at our place in Chennai.
So do you see any defect in current agricultural techniques used by local farmers? Any suggestions? So as I mentioned before, when you look at farmer side, the biggest problem is the supply demand mismatch. Farmer doesn't know how much the market actually needs, and sometimes he produces more and he doesn't able to sell the excess produce, and it ends up wasting. I think if he has that good communication connect between the market and the farmer, there are few startups actually working on this area also, to give live data of the demands and what is the supply from the farming side. If we have a right match between this demand and supply, I think farmers can actually able to make some more profit than what they are actually doing today. Please tell your initial efforts which you made and problems you faced to make your startup possible initially. Okay. Okay, understanding, like maybe I think it's again the same question which was asked before. So as I mentioned, we thought, we were just thinking of starting a company for like 4 or 5 years. Then one fine day we thought, okay, we will start. By the time I was studying and he was working for some other company, we didn't wait for the right time to go and register. We just registered the next day itself. That's it. So once we registered, we kind of get some responsibility, like you have a private limited company registered in your name, but you're not doing any business. From there, the responsibility starts, I guess. So once you have those responsibilities, you just want to do something better. When you read about how the startup companies are performing, when you are in a group like any incubation cells, or when you go and meet any fellow people who are in this area, again you will get more motivated to do that. So I think that's what unless you go there and work on the field, I think we can't able to assume anything and move ahead. So that would be the answer for that.
One point that I would like to add to what Guru said is to have a good peer group. So we keep always telling ourselves, if there is a good peer group, maybe you can have a mental capability to do things. It all depends on what peer group you're associated with. So that is one thing, a small part that plays in your success.
So I think I've answered we have answered all the questions in this. So Akshay?
Yeah, there are some couple of questions in the chat. If you want, you can have a brief look over there also.
Yeah,
So
sure.
meanwhile, just for the information of our participants, because there were generic questions regarding the subsidies and loans for students. So if the students are associated with the CIC Incubation Center as such, we give support, seed funding supports ranging from 5,000 to 50,000, depending upon the kind of work they do. And for the startups, we work, CIC, we work very closely with MSME and tech, and we also help our startups in availing the subsidies that government subsidies through these institutes also. So if any kind, if you're a startup and you're looking for a longer venture you want to develop, you can always approach us, and our details are there in the website too.
So here is one question: is there any effect to the people by spraying ethylene? So there's actually a certain allowable level is there, and I think we make controllers actually for that. We measure ethylene level inside rooms, and according to the prescribed level of ethylene, for how much ethylene we can put for what fruits and other stuff, we designed our controller for that. And I don't think it has actually direct effect with humans.
So actually ethylene at very high concentration in percentage volume is combustible. So that is the regulation you have to follow, because ethylene is a combustible gas at higher concentration. So what we use is in just ppm level. So we use at max 200, 250 ppm is what our application is involved in. So there is no health hazard or neither any fire hazard in what we are using it, because rest of the gases is only nitrogen, which is inert. So in our case, in our application, ethylene is not hazardous.
So what is the function of duct damper? Okay, so duct damper, we use it for cold storage. Like it is a one-way valve kind of a thing.
It's a non-return valve.
Yeah, it's a non-return valve, which you could see. There are many designs to this valve. One you could see in your exhaust fan. Also, it comes with that. So what it does is like it allows air through one direction but stops from the other side. So when we want to remove air inside a cold storage, so we switch on this duct damper fan, which is attached with an duct fan. So it just removes the air inside the cold storage to the atmosphere, but in return it will not allow any air from the atmosphere inside it. So that is the main purpose. And one-way valve it is. That's it.
There is a question: did you develop the ethylene sensor?
I think we answered that. Yeah.
We didn't develop the sensor. The sensor core. There are many different sensors, NDIR sensors and other things. What ethylene sensor is electrochemical type, and electrochemical type sensor is not available or manufactured in India. So we imported only the sensor core. But using the sensor core, there is electronics which has to produce signal that can be readable by our controllers. So the conversion, the circuitry all involved is what we do.
So how feasible do you think is the idea of bringing cold storage to the farmer level? Yeah, it is actually a tough job. That's why I think many of the companies didn't try it, because of the fact that it is highly high capex thing. So the idea is like to form a farmer cluster. We should form a group of farmers together and give them a solution that has 10 tons to 15 tons of storage. 10 tons to 15 tons of storage doesn't cost them much. Now, what cold storage that you see commercially are more of like 250 tons or 500, even 5,000 tons cold storages are there. So they speak in hundreds, whereas we are concentrating on 10 tons to 15 tons of storage, which is actually helpful for farmers. If like 2 or 3 farmers comes together and again, if they can own that particular cold storage, I think it's a big gain for them. So I think it is possible if we approach them in a farmer cluster level rather than concentrating on a particular farmer. So again, Q&A.
Okay. Yeah, so we have covered most of the questions now. Is there any, you want to reply to the last 2 questions that has been raised in Q&A?
What are those?
There are 2 questions. Okay, I suppose
you said 30% of total production being wasted before reaching the human consumption. Is that easy to reduce the percent of waste in your point of view? No, I think there are many companies working on this for several years to do this, and still the wastage is there. We are contributing from our side. We are trying to make it happen. That's what I think I should say. So we are trying our best to make this happen, to reduce post-harvest losses as much as we can. So that would be my answer for this. I think that's it.
Fruits and vegetables are all perishable commodities, so they are going to perish at one time or the other. The point is to keep them in an unperished state for a longer period of time, and they are consumed. So that is how we want to avoid the wastage. But it is a difficult job. There are many avenues where the wastage will happen, and it's a lot of effort, and that is what we are trying to do also.
Okay, so thank you, Guru and Dinesh. On behalf of CIC, I thank you so much for coming down and inspiring many of the startups, being a first generation and working in the field, which is going to be very dynamic in coming years, I could say, post-harvest and harvest. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you all the participants who are joined and for your valuable questions also raised over here. So with your permission, I'm just ending the webinar now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.